Some lots of good chats going down there. I know we could have sat there and chatted about stuff all afternoon, but we've got some amazing sessions coming up this afternoon. So I want to get into this. Marketeers need to be able to change the course when necessary and modify their approaches properly if they want to succeed. But how can it be made possible? We've got a next session, which is called How to Create a Culture of Continuous Marketing Improvement. And please welcome up to the stage for this fireside chat, Raad, Eraiqat, Social Media and Digital Director at Accord Strategy, Alveena, Khalid, CEO of Elves, and also Amra, Sharif, Head of Strategy at Jump Activations. Please give them a round of applause, guys. Oh, come on, please give them a round of applause, guys. There we go. Thank you. Have you all got a microphone there? Are you all good?
Hello.
Yes.
Hi, everyone. How are you all today? I hope you all had a wonderful lunch, right? Everybody ate, filled up their lovely tummies. Well, before we start, I actually want to give you an interesting scenario. So you just all came from lunch, right? Filled up your stomachs, had a good time, and you're back here now. And I want you to imagine that you're coming back, and somebody out of nowhere topples a huge plate of food on you. Now, how would you feel about that? You're all dressed up in your nice corporate clothes, and now you've got lots of stains on them. So now all of a sudden, you have a mess that hasn't been created by you, but you're going to have to clean it up. Not a really great feeling, is it? So something very similar actually happened with a company called Cracker Barrel in the United States, in which the HR department fired an employee after 11 years, and what should have been an HR, problem to solve, all of a sudden became a marketing disaster, because the husband of the employee decided to post it on Facebook with a 6-word question of, "Why did you fire my wife?" And this blew up back in 2017. You had people creating memes out of this. There were hashtags that started, justice for Brad's wife, not even her name, in the hashtag. People started creating satirical YouTube videos with 7 million views, and it all of a sudden became a huge marketing disaster for Cracker Barrel. So I want you to think about if you were the social media manager. Oh, and before we actually go into that, even competitors jumped on board. So Chick-fil-A actually posted a sign at their restaurant saying, "Hiring Brad's wife." And so even competitors kind of got a kick out of it, and this entire mob mentality really, really exploded, in which even facts were twisted or created that weren't real, right? In which people were like that she got fired on Brad's birthday, and they were enraged. Everybody was asking, why'd you fire her? And it literally, if they posted anything on Facebook and Instagram, people would have millions of comments just giving negative, feedback, or trying to really hurt the brand's image as to why she was fired without a reason. So here's my question to all of you, which we're going to explore right at the end of the fireside chat, is if you were that social media manager who woke up one day and everything was going great, you're posting great videos of very yummy pancakes, and all of a sudden you have this disaster on your hands, what would you do? So keep that in mind, and we'll come back to that later on. And now I would like to ask, my other panelists here as well, what to do in a situation in which marketing campaigns, majority of them are usually a great success, but some of them end up being really big disasters. So how do you really, do really good damage control to make it easier for the brands?
Well, hello everyone again. I would start by saying, usually while we start onboarding new clients, the first thing that we bear in mind and we keep into consideration that we work on sort of high-level crisis comms. That's from a marketing perspective. We don't have like to dive into details of the crisis comms and what we will be tackling in such an instances. But like it's good to have some contingency plans as a plan B. Instead of like, and of course, like I won't be hinting by any chance to the answer of what you have touched upon earlier. But mainly the first thing that comes to mind is basically focusing on these, the type of angles on how can we basically contain the situation. What will be like, the plan? Like it can be like a rough plan by all means at the beginning. It doesn't have like, to be that solid plan, but at least like, you just like outline the potentials. And let's say in another like terminology that we're using in the marketing industry, which is the A/B testing, for example. So you set that ultimatum for example, that okay, in this scenario I will be doing this, and that scenario I'll be doing that. Instead of like, leaving things like to happen spontaneously.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I think another thing that you can do is to definitely flip the narrative into positive. So what that means, so how many of you remember what happened to Tesla's Cybertruck during its launch? The glass broke and it blew up on the internet. Everyone was talking about it. So that was a big, time when, things could have gotten in a very rough situation. But everyone knew that they're definitely going to fix it before they actually launch it. So when the crisis is loud, make sure when you're done fixing it, your response is louder than that. And that got a lot of investors interested. I was personally interested in Tesla right after that situation. So that, flipping the narrative and making sure you're taking accountability for what you have done can also have a great impact. Another thing that that you can definitely add to that, before it can actually go in a wrong route and actually damage your reputation to an extent where your stakeholders are nervous about what's happening, is to create a emergency contact list. So what that means is that you need to have all your stakeholders in an emergency contact list in case a crisis occurs. You can just clarify it right on the spot. One more thing that you can potentially add to that is to have all those mock interviews be as, have an interview with, your internal team when you're trying to address a crisis like this. Your team definitely going to have all those different questions. Make sure you're addressing every single point that's out there on the social media. Get all those things right and make sure that your team internally is in sync before they can actually go out to press and address all these kind of situations.
That's definitely some great advice that we have there. Now, if we kind of go back to the topic, right, how to create a culture of continuous marketing improvement, there are situations like Alveena and Raad touched upon, in which you need to do a lot of damage control. But then there are also times when you go ahead and you strategize a great marketing campaign. And when you begin to roll it out, you may feel that it's not necessarily getting the traction that you would like it to, or that the marketing is essentially going stale. So we're going to kind of talk about what you can do in that situation in which you want to go ahead and still keep things exciting and make your brand really, create that talkability for its consumers. So who would like to jump into that first?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit more about that.
Okay, great.
So I think the first thing is definitely to be more proactive rather than reactive. Try to prevent in the first place. And you can do that by making sure that you have your own custom-made dashboard. Either you can go for, something as common as creating your own spreadsheet and having those SWOT analysis every single month, or maybe creating dashboards that's, what's working, in different, and comparing your stats with what's really out there. Either you can go with something like this or something more advanced like a Sprinkler dashboard, which is an advanced marketing software that really helps you get this kind of competitive analysis within seconds that you can get. You know, how's your marketing performing, you know, compared to other projects that are out there. That's one thing. Another thing that you can potentially do is just to get this kind of, I think, going back from the same analytics part, whenever you're getting, for example, you're running a company and you're noticing that you're getting most of your traction or most of your users are from the US, but most of the engagement that you're getting is actually from the Middle East. That really splitting that, you know, conversations and campaigns you're doing among these different geolocations or even demographic for that matter. An example for that would be setting up a engagement campaign for the US audience and setting up a user acquisition audience for the Middle Eastern you know, audience that you have. I think really personalizing, I think we have talked about personalization so many times here, and I'm sure everyone knows how we can get that right, but it's really important to see at what point of time your audience needs that kind of, you know, engagement or user acquisitions for that matter.
Precisely. Adding to what Alveena mentioned earlier, I'm one of the biggest advocates when it comes to a tool that we're actually employing to stay on top of our conversations and what is happening in the market, for example, and that is called the social media listening. So this small performance that you can run online, it will guarantee your like your ranking. First of all, you can measure your brand health, understand like the sentiment, which is something that is quite important and associated with your brand, business, you name it. And definitely, it will give you a further insight about the audience and demographics. So you'll be able to understand to whom are you talking to, and for example, the targeting. If you are running like, you know, a certain campaign with a specific call to action that you're trying to get the best out of the campaign. And circling back to the point that I mentioned earlier, which is the A/B testing. So always it's good to focus on the A/B testing, especially for big budgets. And I'm trying as much as I can not to be too technical about things, but it will give you, like, you know, the upper hand specifically when you are running and launching, like, you know, several campaigns.
So Raad, I definitely agree in terms of targeting, you know, your specific target audience in a manner that is relatable to them and that you can connect with them on a level that benefits them positively. So, you know, actually, when I came to this conference, I realized that a lot of topics actually focus on digital marketing, and rightly so, because it is the age of the digital and tech-based era. But my experience actually lies in experiential marketing or brand activations. How many of you have heard of this? Just for a show of hands. Okay, great. So there's a couple of people in the audience. So as some of you know, what brand activations or experiential marketing does is, rather than you know, kind of getting in touch with consumers via screens, you actually go ahead and interact with them in real life time, on ground, in physical spaces, and you create a brand experience for them. So one of the strategies that I would advise is that, especially, you know, this also works actually across companies, but specifically for, say, small to, you know, mid-sized businesses who may not have such huge marketing budgets, is that compile or combine that digital strategy with a bit of on-ground activation. And through that, basically what you can do is you can create very great innovative solutions for your consumers. I mean, how would you all feel if all three of us came up here and we just started talking about ourselves, right? Not really helpful. But if I was to give you something that would solve a problem for you as a consumer, you would be really interested to find out about that. So I'm going to give you an example of Nivea, which is a brand that has lotions, sunblocks. And what they did was, during the summer campaign in Brazil, when a lot of people are going to the beach, everybody knows why do we need sunblock at the beach? What happens to our skin? You get sunburn, right? It turns red. A couple of days later, it starts peeling, and it's really horrible, right? Now, if Nivea was to just come on and just keep on harping about the functional benefits that its consumers know about, that yes, you should use sunblock at the beach, that becomes boring really fast, right? But what they actually did was they went ahead and looked at a problem that people face when they go to the beach. So adults all know that you need to apply sunblock, otherwise you're going to get sunburn and your skin's going to start to peel off. But what the challenge arises is when children have to apply sunblock within the age bracket of 3 to 6, right? They want to run, they want to build sandcastles, they don't want their mommies kind of, throwing on sunblock on them, and they will run away. So what Nivea actually did was they created these dolls for children that are the material that they're made from is UV sensitive. And so what they ended up doing is they started to create an experience for the children. They went to these beaches in Brazil during summer season, which had a small little box, which had a cute little Nivea doll and a sample of their Nivea sunblock. And the children would, while they're building those sandcastles, would see that their doll all of a sudden, after spending some time in the sun, starts to turn red. And they'd ask their parents, why is my doll turning red? What is happening? And so they would tell them, well, look, the doll doesn't have sunblock on its face, hence it's turned red. So they would give them the Nivea sunblock, and while the child goes ahead and does exactly what the parents would do for them and apply that sunblock onto their face, they will go ahead and learn in a way that is understandable to them, in which it activates their emotions and they learn how to empathize, that they need to go ahead and apply sunblock. So through this very small activation that they went ahead and did, right, they went ahead and empathized or created empathy amongst the children. They reached the children in a manner that they would understand, and they created a positive experience for the child so that next time that they would go to the beach, they can take their doll and their Nivea sunblock and not have parents running after children. So a couple of things from this example that I would want to touch upon is, A, you are reaching your target audience, your relevant target audience, at the exact location where they would require your product. B, it leads to higher conversion rates because you have convinced not only the parents but also children who will grow up to be adults to develop a positive habit of applying sunblock to their faces when they go to the beach. And thirdly, if you look at your specific personalization there, you've actually solved a problem for your consumer and made the parents' lives easier, and also ensured that the kids don't get sunburned by making sure that they go ahead to their mommies and go like, I want that Nivea sunblock for my doll and myself. So, there are really interesting ways. Now, you may think, okay, well, they've gone ahead and targeted the beaches in Brazil and they've targeted those specific consumers. Isn't that such a small number? And the answer to that is no, because whereas you have gone ahead and gotten those conversion rates going well for you, you always go ahead and digitally amplify any activation that takes on board. So you create a very nice video that you can go ahead, post on Facebook, post on Instagram, and then with every summer season, you can also take that in store and have a campaign in which perhaps if you buy the family pack size, your child can win a Nivea doll for free. So these are just some of the ways in which, I do realize that there is a lot of focus on digital, but if you create a synergy amongst different types of marketing techniques, you can really, really ensure a campaign that can give you mileage for a long time, as well as traction and prevent your brand from growing stale. So that actually, takes me to our next question, which is, how would you extend a marketing campaign to retrieve maximum mileage from it?
Well, that's a tricky one, but you can go first.
Go ahead, it's okay.
Well, to capitalize on certain campaign and get the best out of it, I'm not sure how many of you were earlier, but earlier today, since the beginning of the day, because they've been talking about the importance of the real-time metrics and how can you employ that to get the best outcomes out of it. And like briefly, if I can summarize that, you can look at the performance of any campaign. Once you launch the campaign, of course, they've touched upon as well earlier, that you won't be able to look at it like instantly. But now we do have a lot of tools, and like, you know, the technologies are quite like, you know, emerging and rapidly. And there is a way to tackle that in a very easy manner, where you can optimize the campaign and get the best out of it while you're running the campaign. And again, circling back to the thing that I mentioned earlier, which is your contingency plan or like the A/B testing, because I don't go like full on, for example, when it comes to a campaign that I'm launching without like, you know, a solid strategy behind it. So at least I need to identify my personas. I need to identify the problem that I'll be solving and the expected outcomes. And the most important thing of your strategy is how you are going to measure the impact of a robust campaign, because that's where it lies. That's where, like, you know, the meat, as we're saying, lies in. So you will be able to assess whether my campaign was a successful one or not. And especially when we're talking about digital. Now, I understand that the myth in the market at the moment that people are expecting like an instant results. And this is not going to happen, my friends, because it will take time. At the end of the day, each marketing strategy, from the time that we start building the marketing strategy, I mean, usually it varies, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but it might take like between, like, let's say 2 to 3 months to work on a robust, again, marketing strategy or integrated marketing strategy. And or it can be like, you know, any type of strategy that you're working on. I mean, in the same way, we're treating the campaign as well. We cannot just like launch the campaign haphazardly and expect it, like, you know, to start, like, you know, dropping the final results immediately. So this is another thing that is like, you know, it's good to touch upon and raise the awareness in the industry.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So one more thing to add to that is, how many of you have heard of the 80-20 rule? So not a lot of people, so this might be interesting to you guys. So what it means essentially is that 20% of your activities, your efforts, leads to 80% of the results. So out of all the 100 things that you do on a day-to-day basis, only 20% of those things are actually getting most of your profits. Revenue, whether it is revenue, whether it is your conversions, or whatever, however you want to, you know, like to define the word results. So what I'm trying to say here is that just do an audit of everything that's going on in your content or in your marketing campaigns, and find out those 20% and double down on that. That's how a lot of different projects have been doing, especially during when there's, you know, whenever we are in a, you know, economic downturn, or whenever there's a low budget. That's something that a lot of people use. And the next thing you can do from that is, whenever you take this 20%, for example, you have figured out the 20% of your content, or, you know, or whatever activities you're doing. What you can do, let me give an example of SEO. So you have your, you know, blogs posted out there, and then you go to search console, and then you find out the queries that were used to drive the #1, you know, blog post that you have with the most impressions. Now go there, check out the queries that have been used, and optimize all of those content pieces with that query. And make sure that you're not just implementing those keywords, but you're actually elaborating and talking about those active, you know, keywords that people are putting out there. So it's like a constant loop. And one more thing that, you know, you might encounter during all of this continuous marketing improvement is creative block, for example, or not being able to implement, you know, initial strategies that you have set up. What you can do, so instead of just doing it on the spot, have a cadence, bi-weekly or monthly, create this whole strategy that you create, and make sure that you're actually implementing. So, hey, you know, we have 3 blog posts out there. This is what we created this month. How can I leverage it even more? You can do this, so not just by, you know, setting out emails or social media content. This is something we all are doing already. What else that you can do? How many of you have heard of the word HARO, or have used that platform? HARO, it's called Help a Reporter Out. So this is essentially where marketers like us, we help reporters give information to them. And these reporters are from big magazines like the Times magazines, Forbes magazines, and they ask experts like us our opinions on certain tech. The more you participate in them, the more you're likely you're going to have a chance on getting featured on these magazines just by spending 30 minutes a day doing that. So whenever you're writing those 30, say 3 blogs, take that topic, make sure you start answering questions about that in Haro. Another thing that you do is that, start doing outreach to, a lot of podcast hosts or interview magazines and talk about the same thing that you mentioned in your blog post, just so that you can really, get yourself to being an expert in that specific topic. There's Haro, there's outreach. You can even do screen share of actually going through that whole process in a webinar or in a live video, so you're actually showing results of everything you're saying in a blog post, how you can actually implement it. And I'm sure we all know that showing real results or proof gets better traction than just talking about it. So that's just one thing that you can do to have like this continuous loop.
I think those are some really great points that Alveena touched upon, especially to go ahead and give you those quick results. But I also feel, apart from what your marketing departments do and the sort of strategies they create, one of the very important things in making sure that you have a long-term strategy or a marketing campaign that you can take over a long time period is to have the time to actually come up with those creative ideas, that you can actually take across different channels and mediums. How many of you, I know there's quite a few in the audience, a lot of you have your own companies, right? We've got a lot of founders here. I see a couple of nods happening. How many of you come across clients who go like, hey, I need an entire campaign in the next 3 days? Show of hands. Yes, I see quite a few hands there.
I can show my hand.
Yes, I'm one of those as well.
Out of the box ideas, please.
Yes, every client comes and they're like, we want out of the box ideas, but we want it in the next 3 days, an entire campaign. Please tell us how to go about it, and we're going to finalize it and put it on ground and take it forward. And you compare that to, say, a client who says, all right, you know what, this is what I want to do. You've got good 2 weeks, take your time, but come up with something solid. Which one do you prefer? The second one, right? I also feel as, people who, a lot of you have those businesses, giving a bit of that pushback to your client and saying, well, if you want something good, if you want something that's impactful, this is not an Excel sheet, this is not your finance department where I can just plug in a couple of numbers and be like, here you go. This requires time, it requires effort, it requires research. And I say this goes pretty much for across clients, your big ones as well as your small ones. And I know we tend to give the big ones priority because that's where the numbers come in for the company. But give that pushback, because like Raad also touched upon earlier, right? Campaigns take time for results, but if you don't have time to create a good campaign, you're definitely not going to get as great results as you would have if your team had that time to really think of ideas in a more relaxed manner and come up with a proper campaign.
And these are most likely the campaigns that definitely gonna fail.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I have to be extremely blunt about this and extremely bold, but it's better that you have a structured campaign process rather than let's do it. Let's just roll up our sleeves and let's just chime in and launch the campaign, because what is the main objective of this campaign, right?
And I think that also really applies for time-sensitive campaigns, especially brands like, for instance, Mother's Day is coming up or Valentine's is coming up. And they'll wake up February 14th, February 7th, oh, can we have something? And you're like, well, sure, I can come up with some quick tips and quick, the easy-to-do off-the-book campaign for you. But if you want something very different, something that really encapsulates what your brand stands for, then you should have come to me in January. Give your clients and tell your clients that, this is actually, if you go ahead and tell them that, we need time where we've got a lot of projects, you're talking about you. But if you tell them that, hey, this is going to benefit your brand, tell them that it's about them. You want a marketing campaign that's successful for your brand? give us more time. So coming on to another one of our really interesting questions is everybody I'm sure is familiar with content marketing, right? And given the fast-paced world that we live in which everything is changing, there's new trends coming up. One of the topics of concern that we want to address is that how can you use content marketing to stay up to date with trends?
I think going back to the same topic that we mentioned earlier, with repurposing. So whenever we talk about repurposing, we usually just create a bunch of different content and then just repurpose in different channels, and even outreach to our email automation, whatever we are doing. But there are certain things that we do miss here. That is, going maybe in real life, having events on some of the topics that we have written already about, in one of the blog posts or social media posts that you're doing. Find out what's working for you. Again, doing the 80-20 rule. Find out what's working for you. Go in events, go in webinars, talk about it in interviews. And whenever you're creating a content strategy, make sure you're mentioning that, hey, maybe you're just spending only 4 or 5 blog posts per month, but you can really leverage that. Or even those social media content that you're putting, you can really leverage that and start creating ads out of them. I'm talking about, for example, how to do influencer marketing, and I'm putting that on my digital agency website. So I can go about it and I can start creating ads around it. If you're not creating 3 to 4 ads on LinkedIn every single day, you're missing out. So when you're creating all of this, system, I think system works way better than any other thing, like, creating those one-off campaigns. So just create a system of and really go through the whole user journey. Just like we mentioned earlier about campaigns, I think you need to know, just like in setup questions, whenever you're asking those setup questions, you need to nudge a little, talk about different things, and then you get straight to the point and then ask them the question and get the answer that you want. I think the same goes with marketing campaigns and content. You need to nudge a little bit, you need to go ahead with some brand awareness stuff, and then finally ask for the kind of conversion you get. And it's always a good idea to always write this down, in a say you're starting a Google Doc every single month. You're writing one call to action. What is one thing I want to happen this month? What is my main priority? Start from that, and then create whatever content you want to go for and how you can repurpose it. And again, Haro comes in, again, all of those different ads come in, and repeat that process. You don't have to reinvent the wheel every single month. Take that strategy, change the CDA every single month, change the content, but keep the structure same. So you never have to struggle with, not having motivation or, creative block, any point of life. It's going to be continuous.
So, in continuation to what Alveena touched upon earlier, I would add to it, and I would go about like the content marketing strategy by fundamentally mapping out the channels where I would like to be present. So I'll be looking at the different channels, and by saying channels, it's not necessarily tied up to the social media or only digital platforms. We can as well include outreach, we can include PR. Now there's a new version of PR, which is the digital PR or PR 2.0, which is similar to marketing 2.0 as well. And this is another thing that it can be as well part of your content strategy, where you start by mapping out the channels and what type of channels you are going to cover throughout the year. And this is like, I'm sure that you will agree with me, because this is something that definitely you will be covering while working and developing or curating actually the content strategy. When we're saying content strategy, and enough of the jargony about like, the big terminologies and all of that, your content strategy is that, like, if I'm simplifying it in a couple of like simple words, is like that type of content that will definitely be relatable to your audience. So, for example, the majority of the brands now, they keep hammering the pillar of like, leadership. Like they keep saying like, okay, leadership codes, leadership achievements. Yeah, that is amazing and that is quite good. but as well for some audiences and for some businesses, this won't do them like a lot. Specifically that we focus on the high level stuff and we forgot about the most important things that really matters to the business. So for example, if I'm like after sales and I understand that the army behind the show is like, this is as well their like ultimate goal, and this is like their KPI, and that's how I will be assessing their performance, then my objective for my content strategy as well, it needs to be not that aggressive sale call to action, but sales in a way or another, or at least paving the way to the sales. So I'll be like raising the awareness of the product, telling them like about the USPs, KSPs, like unique selling points, key selling points. Why do they need to take my product versus another competitor's product?
Those are some really interesting points that you touched upon, and I would actually like to add on to what you said. One of the things that how you said to kind of identify the correct channels, I think it also goes back to the sort of content that you're promoting on those channels, right? And I'm sure you must have noticed especially over the past couple of years, a lot of brands want to be more purposeful now. Female empowerment seem to be words that everybody seems to be throwing about, right? Without really kind of taking in what it means. And I feel a lot of brands you'll see will try to, kind of jump on this bandwagon that, okay, female empowerment is a thing now. Let's everybody like jump onto this trend. But if you just do a generic campaign that does not, reach out to your audience in a manner that's impactful, they're gonna forget about it. Like you have like 100 brands talking about female empowerment or the same thing, and sure, everybody knows what it's all about, right? But doing a more focused approach or picking up a cause or a particular problem and then focusing your brand and relating your brand to it is the way to go. Like, I'm going to give you an example, and I think this may be more relatable to people from South Asian countries. But for example, we have a brand back home called Shan, and they basically create mixes for recipes, so they make your cooking time a lot easier. And typically, still, in South Asian countries, people live with their in-laws, so the cooking aspect kind of falls on to the daughter-in-law in most cases. And there's also a trend in South Asian countries where becoming a female doctor is something that your parents will push you towards, not just because of the fact that medicine is a noble profession, but because interestingly, having a female doctor, makes you more eligible for marriage, and yet you have women that invest a lot of time, a lot of energy to become a doctor, and then once they get married, they're sitting at home. They can't go and practice. They cannot, because the marital responsibilities start to take precedence. So interestingly enough, they took data from that. They picked up on that consumer insight, and they created a campaign and a very interesting ad in which they showed that this young girl who's just graduated, gotten her, doctor degree, medicine degree, and is now all ready to go out there and practice, and she gets married, and she has a kid, and her mother-in-law kind of steps in to help her out. But it wasn't just about the ad being effective because it touched upon a consumer problem. What they actually did was they partnered up with a company that is called Sehat Kahani, which is an app that's created that actually allows female doctors to practice from home. So they really leveraged that technology, and they gave women who, because you can't just go around and change a culture overnight. You can't just be like, okay, now you've got these female doctors, and tell the family that, we want them going out into the hospitals and working there. Not to say that we do not have a lot of female doctors, we do, but there is a good percentage that ends up being stuck at home. So when they partnered up with Sehat Kahani, there was a call to action at the end of the ad that if you relate to this, or if you're one of those females who's stuck at home, who's got her degree in medicine, who wants to practice but cannot do so, well, here's an opportunity for you to come on board.
And I
So-
think we've reached to the Q&A
Yes.
question. I'm sorry
yes.
for
No,
interrupting.
definitely. Yes,
Yeah.
sure. Thank you for keeping a track of the time.
No worries.
So actually now over to our audience. Anybody who would like to ask any questions, feel free to come up to the mic here and we'll answer them for you. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Sailesh Kumar, founder of iXLV Technologies. So it's a great session. Thank you for the wonderful inputs. So I just wanted to ask you, about the, marketing, continuous improvements are there, but what about the measurements? We use multiple channels, I understand that there are tools, but anything specific you have come across to do that, because 80-20 rules when you were talking about. So any input on the measurements, because we use influencers, we use campaigns and all, but the target is not just a website or something, like there are multiple platforms, like we get messages or something. So how do you measure it?
I can take this one. Well, first of all, I'm trying not to do any publicity for free here for any of the tools that we're using, but definitely I'll be giving you some advices on which type of tools you can employ and you can use for the type of metrics that you're after, basically. So if you're after SEO performance, there is a certain a good and solid tools that are multinational or international. And similarly, we do have other platforms where we can name. Like I said, I cannot name any, but I can tell you, off the record, I can tell you,
Sure.
but not from this platform, definitely.
You should definitely connect with him after this talk.
Yeah,
Yes.
unless they're willing, to pay me for for marketing their tools, basically. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any other questions from our audience? Yeah, come up.
Hi. So with respect to your Navia example, there we knew the problem and then we devised a solution to it. Now I'm talking about B2B offerings where I do not know the problem. So can there be any innovative way to really gauge the right problems from the corporates?
So the solution that I gave you was the B2C, but for B2B, to be very honest, my expertise does not lie in that because I've worked, with FMCG companies for promoting their brands. But if either of you have any B2B advice in which we can come up with tools, I would pass that on to the two of you.
I would say again, it's definitely lies within some good tools, but the key metrics to look at these things, which will be any tool that has competitor analysis, keywords performance, and again, like I mentioned earlier, social media listening. It's a key. It's called social media listening, but it's above and beyond that because it will give you different type of metrics and data. So the type of data that you will be retrieving from these type of tools, it will be contributing directly towards your content strategy. And that's how you will be building the solid infrastructure for your strategy.
What I would
actually,
like to
I can
add
go
is-
ahead
Oh, sorry,
and
go ahead.
actually name a tool which I have used and it's done wonders for me. It's called Sprinkler, and it does all of these things under one dashboard, regardless of how many businesses you have. Even if you have if you have an agency and you want to have this kind of data for every single one of your clients, it's exactly what it helps you. It's slightly a premium version of the regular social listening and tools that we use, but it's definitely worth it. Sprinkler, Sprinkler.
Thank you so much. That's great. And I got a great example of a brand jumping on the bandwagon here, and it frustrates us every single year. Is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, Pinktober. Yes. Oh, let's slap a pink ribbon on something. But what percentage of your profits are going towards cancer research? How are you actually helping? Don't just jump on the bandwagon. Do something with those profits. Raise the awareness. And everyone's calling companies out on it. here now.
I definitely agree. I don't know how they did campaigns here, but I remember back home there was one of these brands that did an entire fashion shoot with all of these top celebrities. Everybody's wearing pink, and a lot of people were like, "Well, okay, great." You know what I really dislike is how something so serious and important, such as breast cancer awareness, becomes all about pink cupcakes and your pink dress, and giving those nice pink packed or wrapped chocolates for your employees to be like, look, we support women, and we're here for you. So yes, I definitely agree.
The things that exacerbate cancer. Awesome, good job. Anyway, I could go on about that.
Yeah,
for a
so we
long
could
time,
have an entire session on that, but I think we're out of time.
But thank you so much to our panelists. What a great session.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Lots of learning there. Fantastic. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. And would you like to get the photo of our panelists, please? That'd be nice. Good session, guys. I like that one a lot.